Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So I've titled my lecture Jitmukh Sada Salahiye Bhaga Rati Char, and as I go through it, you will see why I picked this book from the Pandemiye slow body. But I thought this should be the main focus. So I want to start off with a disclaimer. I'm not a historian by any sense of the word. I'm not a Sikh scholar. I mean, we're all learners, but I really don't have any knowledge to call myself a scholar. Today I'm speaking based on my own experiences and what few things I've learned listening to everyone around me. And really this was much more of a learning experience for me, preparing this presentation. And the only thing that drove me to give this presentation when I was asked is because I really have this love for Asa Diwali. And I don't know if it's right to have a favorite Bani or not, but it really is one of my favorite Banis. One of my earliest memories about Kirtan was in Williams Lake, where I was born and raised, and I was about 6 or 7 years old. I had just learned to read Punjabi fluently, and we went to the Gurdwara Sahib with my parents, and I was handed a poti, and I was told, "Naal padho," sing along. And so I sat on the stage, and there's two things I remember about this. The first thing was the elastic in my salwar was way too tight. I wanted to go tell my mom. But I knew my mom was going to say, tu baithna nahi chahndi kirtan de vich, right? So I just, I was a soldier. I just went along. But the second thing was, that was my first exposure to Asa Diwali. And it was just, I couldn't stop singing along. As a 6 or 7 year old, I don't remember exactly how old, it was really, the Bani was really inspirational, and I didn't know what any of it meant, but I couldn't stop. And it's an easy Bani to sing along with. The melody associated with it is very simple. It's usually sung in early morning rags. You've learned all of this from Sant Kabir Singh. Baron, Asa, they're very calming, very melodious rags. And for me, at least, once I start reading, it's very hard to stop. I'm not a lecturer. My journey has always been a very personal one. I keep very quiet about my journey into Sikhi. And I'm not an extrovert at all, so if you're expecting jokes like Puneet Singh and, Santhir Singh, that's not me. I don't instigate a lot of discussion. I don't preach, but I do listen a lot. When it comes to Bani, Sikh discussions, especially when it comes to Sikh history, just because I think that's one of my weakest points. But in the last year or so, I felt this need to change. And I'll come back to this, but I felt this need that I need to go out there, not to lecture, I need to go out there and learn, I need to engage with people. And it came while I was sitting in an Asa Diwali Divan. But again, I'm going to come back to that. But I'm going to start off with my presentation just asking for forgiveness for any mistakes I make during this presentation. Because I know you guys, maybe you can tell, but I'm pretty nervous. I was pretty excited when we decided the camp was going to be focused on Asa Diwali. I think we considered Japji Sahib, we considered other Baniya, but then we decided Asa Diwali as being the theme. And when I was asked to speak about equality in Asa Diwali, I thought to myself, there's not much to speak about. There's a couple of references to caste, there's, the body of reference in equality of women. But then I started to read, and I started to listen to kathas, and I started to really, immerse myself in the vichar. And all of a sudden it became too much material for me to handle. And I hope that what I addressed today resonates with all of you. And this is my humble attempt to kind of make sense of it. So I'll talk about the sloks. The first half of my presentation is going through Asa Diwali, the sloks that I thought are relevant. There's way more, but for the purpose of time, I need to keep it shorter. we talk about difference of caste between educated, uneducated, men, women. But just to understand this, I want to take a minute to talk about the mentalities that were prevalent during Guru Nanak Dev Ji's time. So, Sant Kabir Singh did a really good job talking about the caste system. They were a prominent concept, Brahmins versus untouchables. It was not just equality of women, but between, castes still are a prominent concept. But at that time, it was kind of the be-all and end-all of everything. Education was not a right for everyone. We all go to university, we all, but it wasn't a right at that time. Even kings and rulers did not know how to read and write. They hired people to read and write for them. It wasn't a basic right. Genders. I'm not going to talk too much about sati because, again, it was addressed before. But women by every society at that time were thought to be inferior. Manu, who's a lawmaker and whose writings are still referenced in the Hindu religion, he wrote that women should be kept under the thumb and control of male relatives of the family day and night. That during childhood, a girl should be under the control of her father. As a young woman, during childbearing years, whatnot, while her husband was around, she should be under the control of her husband. And when she got older, she should be under the control of her sons. He also said that women were the source of all dukhs, that every dukh is linked back to a woman somehow. They were considered to be lower than Shudras, which was like the untouchable caste. They didn't enter the caste system. Again, we've heard about that. They weren't allowed to wear janeus. The Jain religion believed that women could never attain any type of spirituality. They could do bhakti all their lives, they could meditate on God all of their lives, and what would happen is that they would have to take birth again as a man to attain any type of spirituality, or the equivalent of mukti in our religion. And in Christianity, which of course there's many sects of it, so I'm not going to speak for all of Christianity, Catholics do not allow for priests to be women, they don't allow for the Pope to be married, and women are thought to be a distraction for holy men. Even philosophers, way before Guru Nanak Dev Ji's time, the philosophers that were revered. Socrates wrote that men and women do not have the same type of confidence. A man's purpose is to issue orders and get some people to listen to those orders. And a woman's purpose is to obey those orders. Aristotle wrote, and this is actually a quote, "A woman is an unfinished man left standing on a lower step in the scale of development. The male is by nature superior and the female inferior. The one rules and the other is ruled. Woman is weak of will and therefore incapable of independence of character or position." So we all know these things. We know these are thoughts we grew up with, or not we grew up with, but that were prevalent at that time. But seeing it written down and looking into history and reading these things, it helps you realize more how revolutionary Guru Sahib's thinking was at that time. Oh, and also there was another one, power was another one at the time. You had influence and power, and kings and queens were a lot more prevalent at that time too. So what does Asalivar say? So there's many themes that run from Asalivar, and every theme links back to how to meet Vaheguru, what the qualities are of the people that have Vaheguru in their hearts, what actions stop us from meeting Vaheguru, what hypocrisies we engage in. You had that discussion this morning. But again and again through the sloks and vars, we see that everything belongs to Him, everything is created by Him, and everything is done within His will. And there are a few references that are directly quoted, linking to equality. But in many sloks, the equality is implied. All of this this Asalivad is not for men, it's not for women, it's for all of us, it's for all of humanity. And if you take the Bani as a whole with the Vars, you start to understand the themes and see a fuller picture. And I think in this camp, we only just kind of scratched the surface. So getting right into the bodies and the sloks. So the first one is the Satmi body, the first slok from the Satmi body. And it reads, Slok Mahalla Pehla, how much aya, how much gaya, how much jamya, how much moa. How much ditta, how much laya, how much khatya, how much gaya. How much satyar kudiyar, how much paap pun vichar. How much nark surg avatar, how much hassa, how much rove. How much pariya, how much tove. How much jati jinsi khove. How much murik, how much syana, mokh mukt ki sar na jana. How much maya, how much shaya, how me kar kar jantya paya. How me bujya tandar sujya, gyan vihuna kat kat lujya. Nanak hukmi likhiya lekh, jeha vekha teha vek. And throughout my presentation you'll see I've highlighted certain lines. I'll focus on them a bit more. So the slok, pretty much, we know the meaning of ha, it's ego. And it reads that as long as a human is in ha, and ha here is where a human is within their own hasti, within their own identity they've created for themselves that is without God. That human will come and go, he will born and die, he will give to the poor and take from others when in his time of need. He will earn, he will lose, he will be in people's minds honest and dishonest. And I read a lot of steeks and a lot of them said, you know, and this is all in the world's minds that we're judging this. He will count his sins, his good deeds, and due to those, he'll go to Narak, he'll go to Surg. Sometimes he'll cry, sometimes he'll laugh, sometimes he'll be covered in the filth of his sins, and sometimes he'll wash the filth of those sins away. How much jati jinsi khove, while being in ha, thinking to have a separate identity than the Lord, he'll fall into jat-pat thoughts and think, I'm of a higher caste. And he'll lose himself in these thoughts. He'll get lost in them. Lose himself, lose his way from, you know, the true path. He will be seen as a murik or as a wise man by people. And he can't understand the concept of mukti while he's in this state of ha. He'll be obsessed with maya, born and born again. And when he understands how it feels to be separated from God, understands that he is separated from God, leaves that ha, then he'll find the door to God, or else he doesn't have the gyan, and he says he's a gyani, and his soul burns. And the last line of that body, Jeha vekha teha vek. This is what really resonated with me when I was going through Asadivar. And from the steek, the meaning translated loosely in English is, O Nanak, whatever thoughts humans view the other with, whatever the actions they treat others with, those are the sanskar they gather inside of themselves. So that's the Mansik Sroop, that personality you create for yourself, and that's what you become. That's the type of ha, that identity you create for yourself and write for yourself. And of course, this is all done within his hukam. And I know a lot of us, you know, we prefer English, we speak English, and I, having grown up in a Punjabi household, also have reverted a lot to English. But one thing I've learned while I was reading the steeks is how much meaning is lost in the translation. If you read it in Punjabi, it just is, it's that much more rich, and your understanding becomes better. So my Punjabi's gotten better over the last 2 months too. But the steek actually reads, this is Professor Sahib Singh steek, and about this line, this is what it says. Hey Nanak, jeev jive jive vekhde han, teho jiha ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਰੂਪ ਬਣ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ। ਭਾਵ ਜਿਸ ਨੀਅਤ ਨਾਲ ਦੂਜੇ ਮਨੁੱਖਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਵਰਤਦੇ ਹਨ, ਉਸੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਸੰਸਕਾਰ ਇਕੱਠੇ ਹੋ ਕੇ ਉਹ ਜਿਹਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਆਪਣਾ ਵੱਖਰਾ ਮਾਨਸਿਕ ਸਰੂਪ ਬਣ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ। ਉਹ ਜਿਹੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਵੱਖਰੀ ਹਸਤੀ ਬਣ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ, ਉਹ ਜਿਹੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਹਉਂ ਬਣ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ। ਪਰ ਇਹ ਲੇਖ ਵੀ ਰੱਬ ਦੇ ਹੁਕਮ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੀ ਲਿਖਿਆ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ। ਭਾਵ ਹਰੇਕ ਭਾਵ means meaning, ਹਰੇਕ ਜੀਵ ਦੀ ਇਹ ਵੱਖੋ ਵੱਖਰੀ ਹਸਤੀ ਵੱਖੋ ਵੱਖਰੀ ਹੋਂ ਰੱਬ ਦੇ ਹੁਕਮ ਦੇ ਅਨੁਸਾਰ ਹੀ ਬਣਦੀ ਹੈ। ਰੱਬ ਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਅਜਿਹਾ ਨਿਯਮ ਵੱਜਾ ਗਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਹਰੇਕ ਮਨੁੱਖ ਦੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਕੀਤੇ ਕਰਮਾਂ ਦੇ ਸੰਸਕਾਰ ਅਨੁਸਾਰ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਆਲੇ ਦੁਆਲੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਹੀ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਸੰਸਕਾਰਾਂ ਦਾ ਜਾਲ ਤਣਿਆ ਜਾ ਸਕੇ। ਉਸ ਰੱਬੀ ਨਿਯਮ ਦੀ ਰਾਹੀਂ ਮਨੁੱਖ ਦੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਇੱਕ ਵੱਖਰੀ ਸਵਾਰਥੀ ਹਸਤੀ ਬਣ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ। Our thoughts and judgments of others reflect on us. So do you think Guru Sahib wanted us to look at people and say, I'm better than that person, I'm of a higher caste, I'm a man, you know, I'm this, and so I'm better, and judge? So the equality there is implied because whatever judgment we have on people, that comes down and becomes a part of us. It becomes a part of our soul. And that's where I see that equality implied there. So here's just an example, and I was thinking of examples that could relate to all of us. We all know about Facebook, we all know about Instagram, and they're the fakest identities out there. We go out of our way to show how much better we are than others. You know, we go to the gym once a year, we're posting it on Facebook. You know, we show off material goods we've acquired, we brag about how great our relationships are. I mean, you know, oh, you know, my wife did this, my husband did this, my life is so awesome. We create these fake identities. And someone posts something on Facebook or on Instagram and you comment on it. And, you know, you see all these comments on it. It'll be a picture of a selfie of a girl as Manveer Singh said in, you know, last August camp. And you'll see people posting, oh, you're so beautiful, you're so pretty. Right, and then they're turning behind. She really needs to get over herself and stop posting selfies. Seriously, come on. Right? Like, we all do this, right? And it's a really like low type of judgment, but it is judgment though, right? It's judgment. We're judging people, we're looking at people based on fake identities they created for themselves. We're not even judging people by their actions anymore. We're now judging them by the identities they create for themselves on Facebook and Instagram. And there's an interesting quote I found online. The reason we struggle with insecurity is because we compare our behind the scenes with everyone else's highlight reel. Because we all create this, you know, like these kind of pictures from our life. And we say, oh, my life is so awesome, my husband's so awesome, my kids are so awesome, you know, this is great, I'm so great, I work out, I've got this, I've got that. And we're just seeing the highlights. We don't see the internal struggle of people, and we all have it, right? And we're thinking, oh, like, you know, I suck, or my life sucks, or we're thinking that person sucks, I don't know. We're thinking a lot of things, right? And it's all, I mean, it's all judgment. We think we're better. And the worst part of it, there's so much glee when we catch someone doing something wrong, right? Like, you know, it's just like, oh, we saw that, look at that person, look what they did, look at what someone posted about them on Facebook or on that website, right? So much judgment. And, I mean, I'm not saying that we don't call anybody out on anything. Like, Guru Sahib's Gurbani is so complex. It doesn't mean we don't stand up for, you know, panthic things, panthic activities, and, you know, fight on panthic activities out there. You don't stop on justice, but really what matters is where our actions are coming from on the inside. Are you doing it to prove that you're better, or is there another reason in it? And another thing is that, and this thing is always attending our camps, so I hope he doesn't mind us using this picture. He was here yesterday, not here today. So Home makes our connections to Ki really fragile, to Vaheguru really fragile. There's Amritari Gursikhs that you've seen for 15, 20, 25, 30 years that stray from the path. They cut their hair, they start drinking, whatever they start doing, right? And so say we look at a drug addict on the street and we think, oh, like, what's his life coming to? Like, thank God I'm not like that, right? Instead of that compassion, like, what can I do to help? That judgment, I mean, we internalize it. There's no way of knowing that we're not going to be that drug addict sitting on that street a year from now. There's no way of knowing that. And I'm not saying you shouldn't say, oh, it's not wrong to do drugs. Of course it's wrong, right? But it's the thinking that I'm better than that person. Whatever you say or think in that instant, that's what matters. That judgment, that's what matters. That's what we're internalizing. So I think by this talk, Guru Sahib is showing us that we're not better. And it's not just about homemade, it's a lot deeper than that. The fact that so every time, next time, you have kind of a thought to yourself and you're just kind of judging someone, just think to yourself, I just internalized that. That just became a part of my personality. And that's a sanskar I'm gathering for myself. Obviously it's a lot deeper than that, but that's what I walked away from this book. And that's where I saw the implied equality here. We're all the same. What matters is how we get to Vayu. So, moving on here, the next body is, does anybody want to read this for me? Ravneet Kaur? I'm going to pick on people. So in this, there's a concept of caste that's addressed, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit. So, O Lord, in your mind you love your bhagats, the ones that do your sift, your salah. They look beautiful in your door singing your praises. Those who are denied your grace, they go wandering door to door. They don't find any space at God's door because they don't understand their purpose or their origin. Without praising His name, they call themselves the greatest. O Vaheguru, O Lord, I am of a low caste at your door. I'm a little taddi singer of His praises. Others call themselves of high caste. The ones that do your bhakti and tyag for you, I look for them. I want your name from them. And I think that says it all. It doesn't matter what your caste is. It doesn't matter. There's no low or high. The people whose sangat you should be looking for is those people that tyag Him, that focus on Him. And there's a Sakhi of Bhai Mardana Ji. He was of the Marasi caste, is a lower caste. I'm not very familiar with the caste system, but in history it's a lower caste. And he was a Tardi of Guru Sahib's Darbar and did Kirtan with Guru Sahib. And Bhai Mardana Ji's Taram Patni, once said to him, Guru Nanak Dev Ji doesn't come eat at our house. He doesn't eat roti at our house. You know why that is? And Bhai Mardana Ji's like, well, no. He's never come to our house before. And chakta thoda ja food lati. And he said, no, I don't know. It's because we're of the Marasi caste. It's because we're of a lower caste. He doesn't want to eat at our house. And Bhai Mardana Ji's like, no, my Guru's not like that. Guru Sahib's not like that. And, I don't have the exact words, but this is how it is in my head, listening to the Sakhi. And she just kept on going at him and kept on saying, no, that's the reason. And Bhai Mardana Ji, after a while started getting pumped up. And he's like, if that's true, this friendship is over. And so Bhai Mardana Ji gets up in anger and he goes to confront Guru Sahib. And he walks out the door and Guru Sahib's coming rushing to him. And, and he says, Guru Sahib, tusi kiye the? How are you here? And Guru Sahib said, main aaj sochya main Mardane de ghar prashada shakna aaya. And his faith was restored again. And so that, it doesn't matter. Does it matter? It doesn't matter at all to Guru Sahib. We have gurdwaras that are dedicated to certain castes. We have it here. Rambadiya Gurdwara. I hear there's more. That's the only one I know of that's 5 minutes from my house. We have fights in India over Gurdwara between castes. I think it's between the Jats and Jamars. That's a really well-known one. In certain pins in India, Jamars are not allowed to go to the Gurdwara that the Jats attend. If they show up, they're turned away and said, you go to your own Gurdwara. And we have Amritari Gursikh families, where rishte are done because of caste. And you always hear, nahi koi jaat paat di gal hai, sadi rehni behni vakhri hai. Right? It's not about caste. And we hear those excuses, but it is at the end of the day. We should be looking for Gursikhs as life partners who have the same destination as us. That's all that should matter. And that same destination to Vaheguru. How are you going to get to that path? Those are the discussions you should be having before you get married. You know, what is the destination? What is our path? How do you want to go about this? That's really all that matters. So, I mean, here I read this slide and I read this body and I think to myself, it doesn't matter. Equality, inequality, jat, paat, it's all implied here. The only thing that matters is how we're going to get to Vaheguru, the people, doing Sangat of the people that Tya his name. And then Guru Sahib goes on. In the 11th Shaka, there's more discussion about caste. Mahalla pehla badi subajjik naan ka sacha vekhya soye sabni shala mariyan karta kare sohoy agya jaat na jor hai agya jio nave jinki lekh hai pat pave change sei ke. So in the world, focusing on the highlighted look on there, in the world hereafter, social status and power mean nothing. It's only the people that are good that their honor is confirmed. The thing that Vaheguru has declared, it will be, because Vaheguru has declared it, because he takes care of his creation. Every being is trying their hardest, but the only thing that happens is what Vaheguru wills. In God's court, no lower or higher caste matters, nor can any being do anything in God's court through power or through force. We talked about power and force in Kings and Raja Raniya. Because in God's court, you're going to meet people who don't know about any of this stuff. They don't care about any of this stuff. This is not their judgment. This is not what they judge you on. So they can't be influenced by it. There's only very few who are thought to be good in his court. And the ones who have done good deeds on the earth, and for this reason, they get respect at his dar. So like just I said, nothing worldly is going to count when we die. Our social status, perceived power doesn't count for anything. And clever tricks aren't going to help us. You know, like if we've all slacked off in school. I mean, maybe some of us have it, but most of us have. And we get to the end of a course and we're starting to realize, oh, you know what? I haven't been doing my readings because I've been spending a lot of my studying time watching, I don't know, Survivor, Gossip Girl. I don't know what people watch these days, but, and you know, and all that time you should have been studying, we're spending, you know, doing these other things. And you kind of get near to the end of it and you start talking to your teacher and making up assignments and bargaining with her or him and saying, oh, you know, if I do this and I do that, will you pass me? And you end up getting a passing grade and you're begging to your friend, you're bragging to your friends and saying, you know, I got through, I passed, like, look, I pulled one over the teacher. Yeah, you're not going to be able to pull one over Vaheguru at the end of the day, right? Or, you know, the power, the zor, that wealth. An example I could think of, my daughter has a virus she had when she was younger, so she gets respiratory issues because of it. And there's a vaccine out there that's, that they will only give to premature babies, which she's not. And they won't give it to her because it costs $1,000 to give that vaccine. And I've contacted doctors across the border because they won't let me purchase the vaccine in Canada either. But every winter she suffers, and I don't want her to suffer anymore. So I'm using, you know, if I have the money, I'm thinking I'm going to pay that money and I'm going to get that special treatment for my kid. I'm going to break those rules. I'm going to go outside of it and I'm going to get this vaccine for her. You know, using any type of, I mean, that's a small example, but none of this is going to work in his dargah. Jat, paat, power, nothing. Because it's simply, it's not, we don't use, he doesn't use those things to judge us. And in Gurbani it says, Chitrai syanpa kite kamna aiye, tutta sahib jo deve soi sach paiye. So cunning and cleverness are of no use. Only what he gives with his hukam, that's pleasing. So then we move on. And this is in the 11th Shaka, the second slok. And here Guru Sahib addresses the spiritual people, the pandits, the scholars, the people that in our society we generally think of being higher than others. So this is Mahalla Pehla, Lab Baap Doy Raja Mehta, Kood Hua Sikdar, Kamdev Sat Puchiye, Beh Kari Vichar, Andi Rayat Gyan Ve Honi, Pae Pare Murdar, Gyani Nache Vaje Vave, Roop Kare Shingar, Uche Kuke Vata Gave, Joda Ka Vichar, Murak Pandat Hikmat Hujjat, Sanjay Kare Pyar, Dharmi Dharm Karega Vave, Mange Mukh Dwar, Jati Sadave, Jugt Na Jane, Shad Beh Karwar, सबको पूरा आपे होवे घट ना कोई आखे पत परवाना पिछे पाइए ता नाने तोलिया जापे. And I really tried for this presentation to kind of pick tuka, but as the more I started reading the slok, so if you're wondering why I'm reading the whole slok, it just tells such a beautiful story. Guru Sahib builds up to his final point. He goes through everything, he negates everything in his slok, and then he says only he matters. Every slok, only he matters at the end of it. And so when I was doing that, it just felt like I was just kind of taking things and that they could be taken out of context. And so in this, Guru Sahib saying, you know, greed is the king in our world, sin is the prime minister, Pop, you know, president if you're from the States, Jhoot is the Chaudhry, and, you know, sexual desire is the chief advisor, and he, you know, sexual desire is summoned and consulted. It's his biggest advice, their biggest advice giver. And the subjects are going along blindly, and they're following anything what these pop and greed and sin, all these things are saying. And those that believe themselves to be educated, to be gyanis, andiret gyan huni pae pare murda, they dance, they gyani nache vajje vave, sorry, roop kare shingar, they dance, they play instruments, they go into disguise, they dress themselves up. They speak of their gyan loudly. They shout it off the rooftops. Sigania, right? They tell stories of their battles, their epic poems. And then he talks about the scholars. You know, the fools call themselves spiritual scholars. They gather their wealth through their clever tricks. They're attached to gathering wealth. And then he even talks about the taris. And this really got to me in this slok. Because those that think of themselves as dharmic, in their minds they think they're doing dharmic deeds. But they lose all of their hard work because they want to trade their dharmic deeds for mukti. Mange mukh dwar. Right? They're saying, you know, you kind of barter with Guru Sahib sometimes, and you say, you bargain with him, and you say to yourself, oh Guru Sahib, I won't do this anymore, I won't, please. And when you find yourself in a really hard position, right? I mean, these dharmic people, they're thinking, if I do this, I'm going to get mukti. It's not nishkam devotion, it's not nishkam bhakti. And that really, you know, they're still tied to this book because they're expecting something in return, this Ajivjay book. And then there's ones who call themselves celibate. They leave their families, they leave their responsibilities in the world, and, you know, they abandon their homes because they're saying, we're doing this for Guru Sahib. And all these people think they're perfectly on their path. And they're wiser than everyone else. No one person will say to themselves, or will let anyone say to them, that something is wrong with me. Right? Like, it's just, we don't say to them, they don't say, oh, something's wrong with me. I'm perfect. There's no imperfections in me. And Guru Sahib saying, we can only weigh their perfectness as if one side of the scale, there's the weight of honor, God's honor. Only those who are perfect without fault, the ones who have found a place in God's court. So if you're a spiritual scholar, you're a gyani, you're, you know, all these things, Guru Sahib is negating it all. Only the people that are in his court. It's not necessary that these gyanis and these scholars, they're the ones who are going to get that mukti. And so then that makes you think, you know, who's higher than another, higher than one another? And only judgment is what Dharmraj. That's the only judgment that matters. And the only equality that matters is that there's Vaheguru inside each of us. That's how we're all equal. And of course, my karam, my deeds might be made. They might be less than someone else's. But I'm not one to judge that. I have no way of knowing that, you know, someone else's karams or their deeds are less than mine. I have no right to do that. only Dharmaraj, only Vaheguru has the right to do that. We all have the same amount of Vaheguru inside of us. We all have the same goal. We're all equal in that. And that's the equality that matters according to Guru Sahib. The next is the party from the 12th Shaka. Padya hove gunagar ta omi sadhana mariye. Jeha kale kalana te veho na upachariye. ऐसी कला न खेडी है जित दरगे गया हारिए पढ़िया अते ओमिया विचार अगे विचारिए मोह चले सो अगे मारिए मोह चले सो अगे मारिए. So if an educated person does wrong things, an uneducated person shouldn't see them and panic and think, if that educated person is making mistakes, mera ki banna? What's going to happen to me? Shouldn't think that. Because if that educated person is good, he's not going to suffer in God's court. The goodness is decided on a person's kamai. Getting an education or not getting an education is not evaluated. You're all getting the point now, right? It's all these parties in support of that. Education, money, power, status, none of this matters. The person who goes forward in this world according to his own will, that person's going to get beaten in his court. Guru Sahib is very, you know, aap kehne idna na bolo, idna sakht na bolo. Guru Sahib is very sakht and asadivar. Pyar bhi bahut hai, sakhtai bhi bahut hai. I mean, there's love, but there's sakhtai too, just straight, honest, straight up truth. And then we have people who think to themselves, okay, so if we're educated or not, we're judged the same. Does this mean we shouldn't get educated because it doesn't help us? And I see this party used a lot in context, where, you know, or slow, where Guru Sahib says, "Pad gaddi laddi hai, pad," and people say, "Tusi padi jane, padi pada, ida ki fayda." But that can be part of our good karmas as well. The good deeds that we do. You know, if you're a doctor, you're in army duty, you're fighting for honor, you're bringing technology to the poor. Just some of the examples here, you might know some of them, and some of them you might not. But I mean, this can all be a part of our karma. These can all be good deeds that we do. What we do with what we're given is our own choice. So it's not that padai da ki fayda. Guru Sahib was the biggest supporter of Grist Jeevan, of Kirt Karni. I mean, that's one of our basic concepts in Sikhi. That's what we teach all our like kindergartners. What did Guru Nanak Dev Ji teach you? Kirt Karni naam japna van ke shakna, right? Basic concept. So it's not that Guru Sahib is telling you don't get an education, don't have any money. He wants you to live in this world. But the challenge is to live in this world and not to get attached with, you know, all the maya and all the attachments of it. The next slok is from the 12th party, and it addresses the educated once again. Oh wait, sorry. I already did that one. The next one actually is about Sutak, and I'm changing a bit now. It talks about Sutak, and it says Slok Mahla Pehla, Jekar Sutak maniye, Savte Sutak hoye, Gohe atta lakdi, Andar kida hoye, Jete dane anke, Jiyan baaj na koye, Pehla pani jiyo hai, Jit harya sab koye, Sutak kyon ka rakhi hai, Sutak pave rasoye, Nanak Sutak evna utre, Gyan utare toye. And the reason I included this slide is, so Sutak is, you know, it could be applied to a lot of different things. But here, Guru Sahib talks, you know, it's about being dirty, it's about being impure, pitya hoya, right? And so one of the common misconceptions out there in a lot of religions, and we even see it in our culture or, you know, practiced by Gursikhs, is that a woman is considered dirty or impure after childbirth or during menstruation. And even in Sikhi, we have gurdwaras that won't allow women to do seva. And there might be different reasons. I don't know the whole history behind that. But it comes from that ritualistic belief that, you know, women at that time are dirty or they're polluted. And the one I see practiced a lot is women can't go out of their house for 40 days after childbirth. And we've kind of attached a ritualistic meaning to it. So in the olden days, what it used to be is that women, you know, newborns, immune system is very fragile. And a woman who's gone through childbirth, and has gone through, or even surgery these days, their immune system is very fragile, right? And so it's to protect so they're not exposed to all these germs, and not exposed to bacteria. There's a practical reason behind it. And as the years have gone on, we say, oh, no. One of the beliefs, even now, we can't do Seva and Gurdwara, we can't do this. And Guru Sahib is saying, Sutak it does everything. Gohe atte lakadi andar keeda hoye. Inside of a lakadi, there's keede inside of it that are being born and killed. Everything has Sutak inside of it. Even the water we drink has living beings inside of it. And if we're going to keep Sutak, if this concept is true, our kitchen has Sutak inside of it. The only way, Sutak will never go away. The only way it can go away is through the understanding of the Lord. So it's a concept. I just wanted to address that when I saw that body. That's what came to me, is that inequality of women that's practiced today just because of those thoughts. So now we talk about the body that is quoted a lot, and it's always that one tuk that's quoted through it, Sokyo Manda Akhiye Jit Jamera Jan. And we say, women are given equality. And I chose to do it on a different one. And the body is Mahalla Pehla, Pan Jamiye, Pan Nimiye, Pan Mangan Viyaho, Pando Hove Dosti, Pando Chale Raho, Pand Moa, Pand Paliye, Pand Hove Bandan, Sokyo Manda Akhiye Jit Jamera Jan. Pando hi pand upje, pandai baaj na koe, nanak pandai bahara, eko sacha soe, jitmukh sada salahiye, bhaga rati char, nanak temukh ujle, tit sache darbar. And I put the meanings out for this one here. And we all know it just because we've been exposed to it so much. But we're all born from women, we're conceived within a woman. A man is engaged and married to a woman. Because of a woman, relationships are furthered. Rishtedari are furthered. A woman helps the world move forward because from her future generations come. If a woman dies, a man looks for another woman. Because of a woman, new families are born. If kings are born from a woman, then we should not call a woman bad. A woman is born from a woman. Without a woman, no human is born. O Nanak, only the true Lord is not born from a woman. But here's where I think is the most important point. Even if it's a man or a woman, it doesn't matter. If he or she, with his mouth, always sings Prabhu's praises, that forehead is blessed and beautiful. Those faces are going to look beautiful and radiant in his darbar. That's all that matters. I mean, Guru Sahib definitely has addressed the equality and the poor treatment of women at that time, and even in today's age. But all that matters, this is the equality that matters to Guru Sahib. Mokho kaunana da naam bolda. Who tells his name? That's what matters. And that's where we get our equality from. That's the equality that matters, that we all have that opportunity to do this. And I'll come back to this body actually a bit more in my second part. So to this point, we've talked about caste, we've talked about spiritual, dharmic people, we've talked about Sutak, we've talked about educated, literate versus uneducated, illiterate people. And we've talked about what equality is in Gurbani. It's the most basic concept. Everyone has the opportunity for salvation, for mukti. No one is better, no one is worse. We all have one purpose. Does anybody have a different purpose here? Are we ones to judge anybody of their lowness or their highness in this world? Do we have any say what happens in the world after this? We don't. So we're all equal. It's implied. And then in this body, Guru Sahib says, Sabko aakhe apna, this is the 19th body, Sabko aakhe apna, jisna hi sochan kadiye, Kita apo apna, ape hi lekha sandiye, Ja rehna nahi aat jagta qaid gar bhandiye, Manda kise na aakhiye, Pad akhar eho bujhiye, Moorkhe naal na lujhiye. We shouldn't call anybody out bad. We don't have the right to. We don't even know what the criteria is for judging a human. It's not all the criteria we've set up. Worry about yourself. Worry about the judgment in the court after this. And that, to me, that's what equality in Asadivar, Guru Sahib's negated everything that we've used to build these social constructs. Everything. And now to go back to the Pori, my second part of the presentation does actually focus on Sokyo Manda Akhiya Jit Jambe Rajan. And the first thing I want to ask actually is, what does equality for women mean today? Not in a Gurbani aspect, as we've just discussed, but in a societal aspect. What shows you that a woman is equal? What rights have we gained? Anybody?
Suffrage.
Suffrage, okay. Most basic rights that women didn't used to have.
The right to vote.
The right to vote, yep.
Education.
Mm-hmm.
Right to own property.
Yes, right to own property. Okay, sorry?
To run for office.
To run for office.
To be a person.
To be a person. So some of the ones I thought of: freedom to vote, independent thought, to be allowed to think what we want to think and to be allowed to say it. The freedom to be educated, the basic right to learn to read and write, to pursue education as much as we want. Freedom to wear, to do what we please. I'm not, by saying that this is what equality is in Gurbani, I'm not negating these rights that we've acquired. I just find Guru Sahib's definition of equality to be different. The most educated, poor, uneducated, illiterate, poor woman can attain salvation. Mukti. Because none of this matters to Guru Sahib. Not that he doesn't say to fight for rights and to fight for freedom or whatnot, but this, at the end of the day, doesn't matter. In most parts of the world, women have achieved equality by societal standards. Of course, there's lots of problems, but we're allowed to vote. We can drive cars. We can be outside without men. We are free to think as we please. So then why do we feel like we're not equal at all? It's a reality check. There's still rape, there's suicide, there's infanticide of girl babies, there's abortion, gender selection abortions. In India, there's cases that come out every day. Facebook's one of the places where I see these. A young girl was ordered to be raped by her village elders. I'm sure anybody who's Facebook has read about that one. A 50-year-old man, Indian man, raped an 8-year-old girl. A husband poured gas and set fire to his wife and newborn girl while she was sleeping and nursing her. But it's not just in India. It's here. It's all around us. I was just listening to the radio on Friday morning, and this actually really made me stop. And one of the top stories there was about gender selection in the Fraser Valley. And it used to be, 2 years ago, it used to be that for every 100 girls that are born, there's 106 boys. That's the norm. Okay, so the average. And in the Canadian community, for every 100 girls, it used to be 109 boys that were born. And in 2 years, and so that meant, so say in a month, 1,000 babies are born to this community. 30 of them were aborted because they were girl fetuses. And now, 2 years later, they've done the study again because they brought in this law that you couldn't do ultrasounds before about finding out the sex of the girl, et cetera, et cetera. And now it is that for every 100 girls that are born, there's 111 boys. So it used to be 30 babies if we had 1,000 a month. Now it's 50 girl babies we're aborting. And yet we celebrate, we do all of this. And we try to show the community, but inside, there's so much pain, there's so much suffering, and yet we're more empowered than we were 500 years ago. So why is there that? And the worst part is that women are most discriminatory against women. We're our own worst enemies. But a woman's born from a woman. Why? In some cases, you know, we've heard of stories where the in-laws are very, not the in-laws, the husband, someone in the family is influencing the woman to have an abortion and her life is made hell if she doesn't. But a really interesting fact is that in India, where all this education is going on so there won't be, you know, killing of female babies and there won't be abortions, in the most educated upper class, that's the highest rate of abortions amongst those women. They're going out there and they're getting them. This is our right to choose that we want a boy. And so what is education doing for us? We're becoming more educated and we're thinking, well, I've got the right, I'm educated. I know better. So why is there so much pain when we're so empowered? When we've met our societal definitions of being empowered? You know, and in not any way am I saying that we're totally equal or whatnot, but compared to 500 years ago, we're people now, like someone said. And having had a daughter myself, I'm witness to some of those attitudes out there. When I had, you know, you've all seen Brahmjot Singh in a Junikor, and when I had Brahmjot Singh, people would come up to me, they're like, oh, Vidanya, Vidanya, right? And I had a Junikor, and I was really confused by this. People would say, "Main Vidanya de sakti hu?" You know, is it okay? Will you be offended if I say congratulations to you? And I was like, what are you talking about? Right? Like, what is this? I was just, actually, at the time I was just shocked and really tired, so I really didn't say much, but, and I thought about this. Or, oh, it's nice you have a daughter now, it balances the family out. Oh, it's really okay because you've already had a son. What about the mothers who don't have any sons and they have daughters? What attitudes are they getting? Or, you know, when a son's born, it's a Vidanya, and a girl's born, it's like, oh, karma wali hobe. Right? You know, oh, okay, yeah, that's great. Karma wali hobe bas. Right? So those attitudes, they're all out there. And my moment of confession is this: I was really scared to have a daughter. And not for the reasons that are out there. Not because in any way I thought she would be inferior. Not because, you know, I cared about what anybody thought. I was scared to bring a daughter into this world because I thought it would be hard on her. And a lot of my women friends have confessed this to me. And they've said, you know, I'm really scared. And why? And I've just been thinking about it, and I'm like, why? Why is that? We're not following Guru Nanak Dev Ji's slok, written hundreds of years ago, to treat everyone, and not just women, equally. We should be human first and a gender later. And I'll talk about where my fear stemmed from just in a little bit here. Our responsibility as women. And just because I'm talking to women doesn't mean this doesn't all apply. It applies to all of us. But I do want to talk to the Bibi. As a woman, I have a responsibility to my children. So does a father. I'm not negating the role of a father. But Guru Sahib has bestowed me with a responsibility. My sisters, my daughters, my friends, all women can give birth to Rajit, to great beings. We have to be able to bear that responsibility. As a mother, I have a role to instill values, honesty, integrity, morality into my children. I have to instill the love for the Guru in them. So when I said at the beginning that, you know, I'm not a lecturer, I'm pretty passive, I don't really engage, and I've changed in the last year or so. So it was a year ago that I was sitting in Asadivar at Divan, and that book came up. And just really fleetingly, my mind kind of stopped on it. that Rajas, leaders, they're not born to submissive and passive women. There's, you know, who are scared of who they are. And I just kind of thought of that, and then, you know, my mind started wandering as it does in Darbar, and kind of forgot about it. It was just a momentary thought. And over the course of the last year, I've began to reflect on this. And really the reason I began to reflect on it is because of my daughter's personality. And anybody who knows her or has talked to me about her knows this. And I'm not saying this in like a proud mother Mo kind of way, even though I really suffer from Mo. Anybody who's seen my Facebook and Instagram really knows that. I'm really attached to her, and I get that. And I know this is a weakness of mine, but I'm saying this just, she's fierce. She's not afraid to ask for what she wants and demand it until she gets it. She's not easily cowed. You can't bargain with her. She knows what she wants. And she really embodies what a little Kaur should be. And none of it is my doing. I mean, I've spent the last like 6 to 8 months since her personality has started to come out trying to fight this. And you can't change her. And I thought, I'm going to let her be this assertive, proud little being of who she is, knowing herself. Of course, you know, along with Guru Sahib's teachings, but I really have learned a lot about that. Because she's getting to an age where my actions, more than my talk, is going to influence her. So if she sees me back off of something that really matters, something I should be fighting for, she's going to start slowly backing off too. She's not going to keep that assertive personality. If I doubt my appearance, it's going to make her doubt her appearance. If she's going to see me drifting, most importantly, if she sees me drifting from my Sikhi path, you know, whether it be that, you know, I'm lazy during Nitnem one day and we're like running and doing it in the car, or whether it be that, you know, we don't have the family devars that we had when I grew up, oh, you know, but we're just too busy for them today. Or whether it be that I hide my legs or my face in shame because there's hair on them, whatever it is, she's going to start getting the message that she's something less. That there's something wrong with her. And she's going to start straying from that path also. So I was scared to bring a daughter into this world because I thought that it was harder to raise a daughter on the Sikhi path. I thought she would ask me, and I wouldn't have an answer. I wouldn't know how to influence her to not do this. I thought she would ask me, why can't I remove any of my hair? And that she would be restricted in the clothes that she wears. She would be influenced by the world around her. And I thought every step was going to be difficult. And I learned from her that it doesn't matter if I have a son or a daughter. The problem's with me. I've always thought that it's harder for me to stay on the Sikhi path because I'm a woman. And I refuse to pass on that legacy to my daughter or my son, because it's not. Whether I'm raising a daughter or a son, and again it says this in Asa Divar, the only thing that matters is his name. And those Gurmukhs that have his name on their lips, his lalli on their face. And they're the beautiful, radiant ones. That beauty matters, that path matters. Nothing else does. And I know I'm simplifying it, and it really seems easy when I'm saying it. I know it's hard. But if you keep that in the forefront, you won't have these complaints. And I'm just learning that now. You won't have these complaints, oh, it's so hard. And that's our responsibility as women, is to pass that legacy on to our children. That's not our only responsibility, but that's a big responsibility Guru Sahib has given to us. Sheikh Fiji writes, "Aap liye ladlaye dar dar bes se, tin tan janindi mao aaye safal se." So blessed are the mothers of those who gave birth to the people that are attached to the Guru. Guru Ramdas Ji writes, Tanaso Vans, Tanaso Pita, Tanaso Mata Jin Jan Jane, Jin Saas Gras Te Aya Mera Har Har, Se Sachi Darge Har Jan Bane. Blessed is the ancestry, the father, the mother who gave birth to this humble servant. Those who meditate on my Lord Har Har with every breath and morsel of food, those humble servants of the Lord look beautiful in the true court of the Lord. So we've all heard stories about Bibi Nanaki, Mata Kiri, Bibi Amro, Bibi Pani, Mata Gujri, whose sacrifice was the ultimate sacrifice. Mai Pago, the first Sikh Bibi general, who saved those 40 beings, those Jali Mukti that we still remember in our Ardas today. Mata Gangaji. We know, we've heard of all these Bibiyan. And we always gloss over this Ityas and we say, oh, we all know the stories. And I encourage you, the Bibiyan, the Singhs, to go out and just to read these stories over and over again. Because every time you read them, I read them after like 10 years of not having read them. And you find something different in them. Because as you read them, as you go along, your perspective in life changes. And so and then you get something new out of those Sakhiyan. We've read all of these. These women show us that women can be Langris, they can be Tardis, they can be generals, they can be martyrs, they can be shaheeds. They can be anything that the Singhs can be. Not just mothers. And Grist Jivan is Pradhan in Sikhi, and I'm not going to get into that. But there is a lot of role to the reference of the mother in there. And there's 32 qualities that Guru Sahib talks about of the mother, and that's a whole different lecture. And I haven't even gotten through the material for it on my own. But, it's really interesting to see all these different roles that Sikh women have played. And I actually ran across some names on the Sikh24 website, and they've referenced the National Sikh Museum of UK as their source for these 5 Bibiyan that I'm going to talk about. And I've heard about some of them, but I haven't. I would love to delve deeper into the Ityas and find out more about them. So if you know about the 5 Bibiyan that I'm going to talk about, I would love to talk to you after if I say something or if I don't say something that you know about these Bibiyan. So the first one was Bibi Rupakor, and these are all paintings, so I don't know how true the depiction is or correct the depiction is. But Bibi Rupakor was around during the time of Guru Har Rai Ji. She was brought up by Guru Har Rai Ji with a lot of love and care. She was loved by Guru Sahib Sahibzade, by his sons. She was very intelligent. She did seva, noting every word that Guru Har Rai Ji spoke. She kept a record, and she wrote in a very academic manner. She compiled 32 stories of Guru Sahib. And she was the first woman editor. This Bibi really showed, this Kaur really showed the embodiment of love for Guru Sahib. That dedication. And she was the first Sikh woman editor, I said that. The second one is Bibi Pan Kaur Chiniwal. So she was rumored to be 7 feet tall and very strong and very fit. She tied a huge damala like her brothers. And she was the Jathedar of the Gurmat Prachar Jatha. She did Prachar every day and night and joined a lot of people to Sikhi. And she was married to Sardar Pan Singh, who was also a very devoted Sikh. So her cause was, she had a movement to encourage people to take Amrit before they got married. Because it wasn't allowed at the time. She had 90 couples to take Amrit. She got 90 couples to take Amrit before they got married. And she would really talk to the Granthis and fight with the Granthis who were performing these Anandakari ceremonies of people that weren't married. That weren't Amritari, sorry. So that's an example of Bibi who's a Pracharak. The third Bibi is Bibi Balbir Kaur. So she was really hurt when she learned about the deaths of Sikhs that were gunned down by the British during the movement to liberate the Gurdwara Sahibs from the corrupt Masands. Bibi Kaur and some other women decided to join peaceful protests to liberate those Gurdwara Sahibs. And she had a 2-year-old with her at the time. And the Singh said to her, Bibi ji, tusi piche raho, thoda bachcha hai chota, kuch ho jaga thanu, because they just used to open, gunfire into the crowd. And she, said that I've vowed to serve my community. And I wasn't able to find a Punjabi translation of this, but they're saying that there's a quote out there in Sikh history that actually writes exactly what she said. We have that quote. And I shall deem myself fortunate if I'm martyred along with all my brothers, with all the Sikhs. And if you're worried about my child, let him serve the community. He can't have a better chance in life. And it's written that as when she said that, there's a rain of bullets because they're marching peacefully, and there's a rain of bullets on the crowd, and her 2-year-old was actually shot clear through the head. And she laid her Shaheed Bacha down, her 2-year-old, and she, with the other Shaheed and wounded Singhs, and she marched on. As a mother of a 2-year-old, I mean, this, we do everything to protect our children. And I can't even begin to imagine the avasta of a Bibi that's able to do that. The next one was, and her strength was a leader and a mother of a Shaheed. She took a cause and she led, and she was the mother of a Shaheed, of a 2-year-old Shaheed. The next Bibi was Bibi Sahib Kaur. So she was the daughter of Raja Amar Singh of Patiala. Her brother was actually a very weak and gullible character. And in 1729, she took on the administration of the Patiala kingdom because it was in real disarray and it was in danger of collapsing just because of her brother's weakness of, character. And she led battles. She led 2 battles in 1796 and 1797 when the kingdom was about to fall. The kingdom was about to fall. In 1796, when the sannyasis at Hardwar snatched and burnt a sroop of Guru Granth Sahib, she led the attack on them. In 1797, Punjab was invaded and the Sikhs fought back, so they retreated, and she joined the battle and got a whole bunch of Singhs to join the battle and got them to stand in front of Guru Granth Sahib and say, Apa piche nahi hatna. There will be no retreat. So she said to them, Apa nahi piche hatna. And the Sikhs were victorious. And actually in history, the invader at that time wrote, and this is a direct quote, Sahib Kaur was a better soldier than her brother, and instances indeed have not occurred infrequently where Sikh women have actually taken up arms to defend their inhabitants from the desultory attacks of the enemy. Throughout the attacks, they acted with the intrepidity of spirit that was highly praiseworthy. That's the enemy that was attacking them that wrote that. So this is her strength. She's a Sikh, she's a leader, and she was a warrior. She stood up to the Singhs and said, we got to get in there and fight. There's going to be no retreat. What's this retreat business? The last Bibi I want to talk about is Bibi Deep Kaur. So, a bunch of families and Amritdhari Sikhs went to see Guru Gobind Singh Ji, where they received his blessings. And a group of men and women from Majha were on their way to Anandpur Sahib, and they were attacked. And when they were attacked, Bibi Deep Kaur found herself in the company of 3 armed spies, and she wounded and killed 2 of them. She didn't know their intentions. She didn't want to find out their intentions. Obviously, the intentions were good. She killed 2 of them, and she wounded 1 of them. And when the Sangha found out about her abduction, they got to her and they dressed her wounds, and they took her to Guru Gobind Singh. And Guru Gobind Singh Ji really praised her bravery in front of the Sangat. And the really inspirational thing about this is that the Sangat was so electrified by her story and her bravery that at that same place so many girls took Amrit. So she's a woman as a warrior, but also as an inspiration, drawing others to the charan of the Guru. And actually, I do want to tell you one more story about a Bibi that I've met. And Master Naranjan Singh Ji, if you've been to past camps, has come to some of our camps, and he told us about this Bibi. And she wasn't Amritali at the time, and she told her story to Master Ji, and she was married, and she had a dream one night. And the dream was that you're going to have a child, and you have to teach him Nithanim. And shortly after this dream, she found out she was pregnant, and she took Amrit. And she started learning her Bani. She didn't do Bani, she didn't do Nithanim before, she started learning her Bani. And over the course of her pregnancy, by doing Nithanim Bani multiple times a day, sometimes like Japji Sapar 30 times a day, she memorized her Nithanim. And when her child was born, he started to speak, and he was doing Japji Sap, I think it was like under the age of 2. And he knew Nithanim off by heart by the age of 4. And he knows Sukhni Sahib now off by heart also. And the same thing happened with her second child. They sit in Amrit Villa without opening their chonkri for hours.
They're from New York?
Yeah, they're from New York. And after I heard this story, I actually had the chance to meet this Bibi. And you know, when I heard the story from Master Ji, I thought to myself, when I meet her, I want to ask her these questions. I want to ask her how she did this. Like what? Like how did you get it? Go on, you're doing Japji Sahib 30 times a day just to memorize it? I mean, that's... I was speechless. And I said, I want to ask her all these questions. And someone pointed her out to me when I was at a Smagam in New York. And when I saw her, being in her presence was really humbling. And she just had this glow to her that I felt, and this peace inside of her. And I said nothing. I said Fateh. I didn't ask her anything. And it's just, you know, that lalli, that peace, that inner calm that you have. So those faces are radiant in his darbar. That's where the beautifulness, that's where that sundarta comes from. And to me, it's an example of kirpa. And I listened, and I was thinking to myself, why does Guru Sahib pick certain people for kirpa? You know, like, I want that kirpa too. And then I heard Santveer Singh's lecture the other day, and he said, you know, kirpa is actually, it's nice to be viewed as a rain. And you have to have your bowl ready to receive it. You have to clean that gandagi out so you can receive that kirpa. And that really hit home with me, right? I mean, I can't say. Guru Sahib is always blessing me with his kirpa. We can do nothing without it. But also it's an example, this Bibi was just an example to me of an influence of a mother's kamai on her child. We have this responsibility. And we can see from the Bibis that I've talked about, they fulfill their responsibilities as warriors, as mothers, as inspirational leaders, as Panthik leaders, shaheeds. They've martyred their children, and they love their Guru, and they put him before all else. And we need to fulfill that responsibility. And what does this mean for us today? Not all of us, not just the Bibian, the Singhs, the Kaurs. And when I'm saying this, I really am not preaching this to you. What I have learned when preparing for this presentation, like I said, I'm saying these things to you, and I'm saying them more to myself. I don't need to ask anyone for equality. I don't need to ask for empowerment. My Guru gave it to me. He gave it to all of us. He told me that there's no inferior beings. And why are we failing that responsibility? Because we ask for the wrong kind of empowerment. We ask for the wrong things. We don't know what to do ardas for. Let's look to our past and learn from these Bibis who have embodied the spirit of the Guru. And the Singhs too. The Singhs, the Kaurs that have embodied the spirit of our Guru. Who have not asked for equality. They saw it as a Vaheguru given right, and they used it to serve their Guru. So let's look at that. So where do we go from here? We've talked about equality, what it means, what it comes across in Asadivar, and I actually don't think I've done justice to the topic. So we need to ask for the right type of empowerment. We need to deal with societal inequalities. I'm not saying don't go out there and, fight and don't fight for justice. We need to deal with these issues. But we need to fulfill our responsibilities to the Guru also alongside with that. The more educated we become, the more we lose touch with reality as the Guru described it to us. With equality, as the Guru described it to us. We undermine each other. We have more distinctions and cliques in this society between educated, uneducated, caste, males, females, who post the best selfies, everything. We judge on everything. And people say, so the answer to all of this is education, to the gender selection, to the socioeconomic distribution. But we know that not to be the case. We need to use our education to do good deeds, to do good for our soul, for ourselves, for society. We need it for the betterment of society. We need to be a part of this society. But the only solution is His name. The only solution is His Naam. Guru Sahib tells us again and again throughout Asadivar. Every single body, every single slok, it's about focusing and meditating on His name. We need to focus on our jivan, show love to humanity, contribute to humanity, like I said, and expect nothing in return. Nishkam, seva, and bhakti. I actually didn't really know what nishkam meant before I started researching this presentation. But that nishkam seva, that nishkam bhakti, do it and don't expect anything in return. In Ardas, we say, Nanak naam chardi kala, tere paane sarbat da pala. Even when asking for the pala of the jug, of the whole jagat, we say, tere paane, within your hukam. So expect nothing. We really need to pay attention to what's going on around us. We're immersed in our TV shows and dramas and networking sites and WhatsApp, iMessage, whatever there's out there. We're having these conversations. We know the lives of the characters on the TV shows better than we know what's going on around us in our own houses. And we need to focus on that. People suffer from depression. Our brothers, our sisters, they might be living in the same house suffering from mental illnesses, suffering from depression. They might be pressured. They may be pressured to have abortions. And we have no idea that this is going on because we're just immersed in the jhuthi dunya around us. This fictional world we've created for ourselves. We need to stand up, pay attention, fight for justice, speak up for the vulnerable, and take action. We need to embrace Sahaj and Santokh. Sahaj is an inner balance, and I mean that doesn't do justice to that, but it's an inner balance, and Santokh is contentment. Whether that contentment is with the amount of education we have, with the jobs, with the money, in our marriages, in our relationships, unless there's that contentment in our life, that Santokh, there will always be chasing after the wrong thing. There will be no time, no room in our hearts for our Guru. This doesn't mean that you shouldn't be the best that you can be. You should be. But how many times do we say, oh, I just natnam gaddi vich hi hoya. Aj hoya nahi natnam. I was going to be late for work. I went to sleep late because I had to go to my friend's birthday party last night. And I'll do Amrit Vela tomorrow. Otherwise, I'm going to be late for work. My boss is going to be really mad. We always put bhakti and bandagi last because we're not content. We're chasing after the wrong things. Put it first. And those things are going to come easier. We need to be role models for our daughters, for our sons. We need to be inspirational. If we don't put our Guru first, how are they going to put our Guru first? And by we, I mean Singhs and Kaurs. Just because I've talked about the role of mothers, that doesn't mean the role of fathers is diminished. Sings, show your daughters and your wives and your sisters that you believe the concept of equality that Guru Sahib has bestowed on us. And practice that equality yourself. Everything Guru Sahib has written for Singhs is written for Kaurs. We need to stop asking and practicing in our homes, in our workplaces, in our gurdwaras, in every walk of life. And it goes a lot deeper than doing dishes and helping out. I mean, you should do dishes and you should help out. But it's about the understanding that Guru Sahib gave to us. Take that understanding and show your daughters and your sons. And Singhs, you need to support your Bibiyan or support your sisters who are getting involved in sevas. And I don't mean in that token female, oh, see, you know, we have a committee of 40 people running the Gurdwara and we have one Bibi because we really need that Bibi to look good. Because we're equal, because we got one Bibi amongst 40. Support their voice. And Bibiyan, we need to get involved. We need to know what our voice is. I'm sure things were tough for Bibiyan 100, 200, 300, 500, 600 years ago. They were tough for these Kaurs. And yet we have amazing role models from Sikh history when that equality wasn't even practiced, the equality as society, that societal equality we know today. Guru Sahib is sometimes very harsh in the terms that he uses, but he tells us what his reality is, what our reality is, what the reality is. And he has again and again told us that no one's inferior, and even the most inferior world as viewed in the eyes of the world can and have attained mukti, salvation. We need to understand that Vaheguru is in all of us. Only he can judge what our deficiencies are and what our inequalities are. We have equal opportunity to become one with him. If we understand this, we're going to be one step closer in succeeding in the goal that we were put on this earth to achieve. If we don't, we won't attain that goal. We'll die and we'll be born again and again and again for centuries to come. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Bye, Soni Hala.